2 Minute Drill Podcast, Jim Monaghan along with Chris Swendeman. It's a pleasure to welcome in the longtime radio voice of the New York Jets, Bob Wischusen. Bob, good morning. Welcome to the 2 Minute Drill.
Good to see you guys. How are you?
Let me start on a positive note if we can, and that would be in the last two games, the Jets have only allowed 13 points each, and in the second half, these two games, a combined 6 points. So even though they're 0-7, Bob, how close are they to that first win?
Yeah, I know it's something that a Jet fan doesn't want to hear, right? The NFL is a results-oriented business. They're 0-7. They haven't won a game, but they've had second half leads in multiple games. There's really only been a couple of the games that have been lopsided. It's funny, like a couple of the games, Pittsburgh to start the year, certainly Miami, the offense put points up and the defense couldn't get a stop when necessary. And now it is flipped. Now the offense has gone kind of flatline, and the defense has played well the past couple of games. At some point they will put it all together, and at some point they'll win some games this year. I'm pretty confident of that. They run the ball effectively enough, certainly, that they have at least something that they can lean on. But 0-7 is 0-7. There's no way to sugarcoat it.
You look at the next five games that they have: Bengals, Browns, Patriots, Ravens, Falcons, and with the exception of the Patriots, who I think are playing over their heads at 5-2 at the moment, those are all winnable games.
Yeah, I guess, the problem was like yesterday against Carolina was a winnable game. Denver back in London was a winnable game. They've had multiple winnable games. They just haven't been able to get over the hump. So, I think for them, it's almost not even important who the opponent is. It really is about them. And especially, they have to figure out what they want to do with the quarterback spot going forward. That's going to be the biggest question that Aaron Glenn's going to have to answer.
And that was my next question for you, Bob. The big story out of yesterday, obviously, Justin Fields benched, Tyrod Taylor in. At some point, are they able, with the play that Fields really hasn't produced, I think, like they wanted to, either with his legs or with his arm, can they go back to Fields at some point, or is this Tyrod's team the rest of the way?
They could go back to Fields next week. They could have Tyrod Taylor put up a field goal, right? So they could look at this as an opportunity for Justin Fields to watch from the bench for a half, maybe hit the reset button. The bye week is coming up. That's a good question. And so much of their offense, everything that they practiced through the spring, everything that they practiced all summer was with the skill set of Justin Fields, which is a lot of quarterback run, right? It's almost as close in the NFL as you're going to get to the triple option, where he does a lot of that in the belly of the running back for a while. Hold it. Do I give it? Do I pull it? Do I throw it? Well, those are the three options. He can do all three. Most, if not all of that, disappears from the playbook if Tyrod Taylor is the quarterback. Like, he doesn't do that. He is really an old school, stand in the pocket, throw the ball, pro-style quarterback. So that's a big portion of the playbook that gets lopped off. Now, maybe they do need to simplify it. Maybe they do need to concentrate on just a quarterback that can stand in the pocket. Obviously, Tyrod Taylor's got some mobility, but he's not nearly the athlete, not nearly the runner that Justin Fields is. But, I did a game this past week, Duke and Georgia Tech, and we were talking to the Duke coaches because they started off 3-0 in the ACC. We're asking their coaches about like how they got their offense moving. And they said back during camp, their coach, when their offense was really stagnant, even in camp, said, you know what? We're not installing anything new. For the next 2 weeks, we're just going back and working on what we already know and drilling that and building from there. And I remember the offensive coordinator in our meeting saying, we looked at Manny Diaz, who's the coach, like, this is fall camp. Like, this is install. This is where we're supposed to be putting things in. You're kind of putting our entire process on pause for 2 weeks. And Manny Diaz was like, I don't care. Well, like, we're kind of bad at everything right now. So let's simplify it and go to what we already do and see if we can get better at it. And, the OC basically said we practiced it for about 3 or 4 days. And all of a sudden, on like day 4 or 5, it kind of clicked. And our guys were like, okay, now we're really comfortable with this. and then we built off of that. I don't know. Maybe that's what the Jets need offensively. Maybe they need to have a Tyrod Taylor, who's just kind of a pure pocket passing quarterback, concentrate on that, and then maybe that part of the offense will click if it's simplified. I'm sure right now they're kind of grasping at straws, looking for any solution they can find.
And you
Bob,
don't want to make, and you don't want to make, sorry, Jim, and you don't want to make excuses for anybody, but also Tyrod comes in and he doesn't have Garrett Wilson, who is a huge help to the offense. And I mean, for any quarterback, throwing to Garrett Wilson is a big difference when you don't have him in the game plan either.
Yeah, I mean, going into yesterday, we were 6 games into the season, and there was not another wide receiver on the team with even double-digit catches this year outside of Garrett Wilson. So he really is the pure, like, 1A receiver. And right now, they don't really even have a 1B. They might not really even have a 1C receiver.
Yeah.
They're really trying to identify if one of those other guys can kind of step up and be the yin to Garrett Wilson's yang. But, when you don't have Garrett Wilson, now you're left. I mean, the only other reliable receiver yesterday, at least a guy that kind of had a resume of catching the ball this year, was Mason Taylor at tight end. And he wasn't even targeted until Tyrod Taylor got in the game. So it's not hard to figure out why they struggle to score points.
When you look at the Jets hierarchy this year, you have a first-year general manager, first-year head coach, first-year OC, first-year DC, first-year special teams coordinator as well. That doesn't add up to a recipe for success. How much time do you have to give this group, do you think, Bob, before it does start to gel?
Yeah, and a 24-year announcer. So I'm right there with Jet fans, right? Like, I get it. I've seen, obviously, this movie many times before myself. But what I've said in the past is nothing that has happened over the last 15 years is the fault of this group, even though right now it probably feels like they're bearing the brunt, not only of what's happened this year, but everything that's happened the 14 years before that. And like Jet fans want to hear the word rebuild, like a 3-year-old or 4-year-old wants to see broccoli on their plate, right? Like they want it to be their turn to eat a chocolate chip cookie. Like, why can't we have the good things that everybody else has? But broccoli's good for you. And it's also not the fault that the previous rebuilds didn't work of this current regime. Like if you want to wipe everybody out that's in the building right now, fire everybody, and you bring in a whole new group of people next year, it doesn't change it for them either. Like they will still be at the same starting point that this group is at. And when they built the roster this past year, they brought in Jawan Briggs, they brought in, a couple guys on the defensive line. They had to bring in Brandon Stevens because they lost DJ Reed at corner. Harrison Phillips, defensive tackle. They brought in a few guys. It wasn't hard to figure out how they were approaching this season. They didn't go out and throw a bunch of money around on the free agent market. They didn't make trades for the most part. I mean, any trade they made was a lower level draft pick for, I think, guys that Bill Parcells used to refer to as hold the fort guys, right? Like we need somebody to hold the fort because this is still a process. And that's the reality of it. So it's, to me, like to blame the current regime who's been here for 8 months for everything that happened before they got here. I get it. Jet fans are angry and they have every right to be. And the owner's angry, right? I mean, he's tired of watching it. That's why he makes changes. But any regime is owed time. Like you can't make a snap judgment about anyone right after they arrive, or you're just kind of lying to yourself about the hand they were dealt. And they should have the right to play those cards the best they can for a few years and see if they can fix it.
I covered the Jets and the Giants for 3 years in the mid 90s for when I was sports director at WNEW-FM in New York. And so I was there for the Rich Kotite era. And while a lot of fans think that they could be a better head coach than the guy who's in there, and they know more about making a baseball lineup than Aaron Boone or whatever it happens to be, whatever sport you're talking about, there were times in Rich Kotite's post-game press conferences where I really felt, Bob, that he was in way over his head. And there were a couple of moments in the London game recently where I looked at Aaron Glenn and thought, oh my gosh, this looks like Kotite version 2.0.
Yeah, that's a tough comparison. I mean, my first year of being in the building regularly and covering the Jets as well was year two, of Rich Kotite. And I remember there being just as much of kind of a hopeless feeling among the players
Mm-hmm.
as there were among like everybody covering the team or the fan base. I don't feel that with this group. Like these players to me don't feel hopeless. They feel like they have a lot of talent at a lot of different spots on the team. They have a young offensive line that I think can be a good offensive line for a long time. Geez, if Elijah Vera Tucker could ever stay healthy, that would really help the offensive line. They obviously need more weapons on offense. I mean, the same thing going all the way back to those years. They've never really been able to solve the quarterback problem long term. They've had a handful of years. Vinny Testaverde had a couple of great years. Chad Pennington when he could stay healthy, so on and so forth. But it's always been a search for the quarterback. They're still in that search. But I feel like this group, as close as they've been to winning some games this year, does feel much more together, unified, and hopeful. And to me, that's a testament to Aaron Glenn. Like none of these guys are saying anything mutinous in that locker room. I do think that they still believe in this very, very small sample size that that their coach is going to be okay. They just, I think, need some time, and I know Jet fans don't want to give them that time. I get it.
It's funny you say about the rookie coach. And do you think, Bob, it puts a little bit more pressure on the Jets and Aaron Glenn and his coaching staff? Because if you look across the stadium, here are the Giants with their rookie QB doing great things, albeit didn't get the win yesterday, but he has really turned this team around for the Giants. Do you think that puts more pressure on Aaron Glenn and the Jets to kind of keep up with that? Because you're seeing the upswing of the Giants, and now the Jets at 0-7 are looking at, and they don't even have a quarterback. And Jim and I had spoke earlier in the season and said we thought the Jets were going to come out and be way further along than the Giants, and here we are, and the Jets are sitting at 0-7. Do you think the ascension of Jackson Dart is actually putting more pressure on the Jets to succeed?
I mean, if they had a Jackson Dart on their team that they could go to, that they drafted in the first
Right.
round, that was their guy of the future, and obviously at this point, that guy would probably be on the field, maybe, but they don't have a Jackson Dart. They didn't draft anybody that's kind of their quarterback of the future. Now, that will very likely change next year. I mean, it certainly looks like the Jets are going to be very high, if not the top pick in the draft, and they will have their choice of this year's quarterbacks. I mean, are you feeling pressure to perform the same way a team that's 2-5 and just blew a 3-score lead yesterday and gave up 33 points in the fourth quarter? That's a tough to feel pressure, when the team that you're being compared to did that. So I think the Jets and Giants are probably both looking at each other saying, we both have our own problems. And we don't really need to worry about the problems in the other locker room. We have our own issues that we have to deal with. But the one thing that you'd say about what the Giants are doing with Jackson Dart and what the Jets have often done with quarterbacks is, it's hard when you take a guy that didn't play a massive amount of college football. Jackson Dart, pretty experienced college quarterback. But the Jets have done this with guys like Mark Sanchez, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, where, some of these guys, I don't even know if they started 25 games in college. And now we're really struggling. You're the savior. Here are the keys to the car. You're 21 years old. Go save us. That's hard. Like in this league, when you're playing against grown men that have done this for a long time, that's really hard. So I'm even hoping that if the Jets draft a quarterback next season, they do with that quarterback what the Giants did this year with Jackson Dart. And that is start the other guy. And you watch for a while. And if it becomes totally hopeless and we really feel like we need an infusion, you become the jolt of energy and we'll put you out there. That's a totally different set of circumstances than having the young quarterback be the starter from day one in training camp. And now you on opening day have to go out there and be our savior.
Like when you come in out of the bullpen, it's a lot easier and you can be a lot more free, and the pressure by the time you come in, then the season's kind of over and it's like, okay, go make your mistakes and we'll live with them. It's different when you start the season as the guy, and oftentimes the Jets have just put that rookie out there on day one, and
Right.
that's really hard. So we'll see what they do next year at quarterback. That'll be the biggest offseason question they have to answer.
And meanwhile, Daniel Jones, who was basically run out of town, is leading the Colts and looks like an MVP candidate. So go figure on that one.
Well, and Geno Smith reinvented
Yep.
his career after he left the Jets. Sam Darnold was had a terrific year last year when he was finally given a chance, obviously based on injury in Minnesota, but took that, ran with it, and now is quarterbacking a team that also might go to the playoffs. Baker Mayfield was drafted
Yep.
number 1 overall, has bounced to his third team. Now he's got a team that could easily win their division and could easily be a favorite to possibly go deep in the NFC. I mean, there are several good examples of guys who you can tell, if you're just willing to go through all the bumps and bruises of the early part of your career. Like we used to develop quarterbacks in the NFL.
Right.
That's what used to happen. They don't do that anymore. Now if you get drafted in the first round, especially high in the first round, you pretty much play. And if you don't show in your first 2 years that you can play, it's almost like teams are ready to move on from that guy. And you see examples of once a guy gets a change of scenery and kind of has some scar tissue built up, maybe you should be a little more patient with quarterbacks than teams are.
In addition to your work, of course, with the New York Jets, you do other sports as well, including hockey. I wanted to ask you, because I think hockey, doing play-by-play, is the toughest sport. Football, to me, seems a little bit easier. I've done high school, college, and minor league baseball. To me, that's really easy. Hockey, with the line changes and everything else, I don't know how you keep focused on who's doing what, especially in the role that you have, Bob, because you're doing so many different teams. In fact, I think was it last year that you did 5 separate playoff series?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the way it works with ESPN. In the old days, when one network would just have the league, right? It was NBC, and they did all of the playoffs. They did everything. You would get assigned a series, and you would kind of follow that series. And occasionally, Doc Emmerich would kind of parachute in for a game 6 or a game 7 of a different series if his series ended early and then another series went long, something along those lines. But because we split the package with Turner, we have nights more than we have a series. So the way it's been, we'll see how it continues in the future because Turner doesn't have the NBA anymore. But it was like, Turner would have the NBA Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. ESPN would take over with the NBA like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, those were our hockey nights. And then later in the weekend, it would be Turner that would have hockey and we'd have the NBA. So if you're going to do hockey, say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, when the playoffs start, well, yeah, like they don't play games 1 through 4 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I would do, a game 1 Monday, a game 1 Tuesday, go back and do a game 2 Wednesday, and then do a game 2 Thursday, and you kind of bounce from series to series. So yeah, you move around in the playoffs for sure, but it's a pretty good tutorial through the regular season because I do about in the neighborhood of 35 regular season games. So I watch a lot of teams and also see a lot of teams in person. So that helps.
I would imagine the prep time has to be unbelievable. I asked Kenny Albert about it. He actually prefers doing hockey, thinks he's better at it than he is at other sports because that's how he grew up. He said, to me, it was almost second nature to call a hockey game. And I can't imagine, as I mentioned, with all of the different line changes and the speed at which that game moves.
Yeah, it's the only
mind-boggling.
sport where the players change while the game's happening. At least every other sport, it stops. And then in between plays, I can see who's coming in and out of a football game. Football, of course, a lot more predictable, right? If it's 3rd and 8 and they've got 4 wide receivers on the field, you've got a pretty good idea of what they're about to try to do. Hockey, it's just, the puck's out of harm's way. You start to tell a story. All of a sudden, 2 seconds later, they're firing it on net. Although I have to tell you, I have called baseball. I think baseball's just as hard. And a lot of people believe that baseball's, I would say that just because there's so much time to fill. And I've never thought that. I mean, it's easy to tell stories about the players, have a baseball conversation with your partner. You know, that's fine. To me, the reason baseball's hard, it's the only sport where, like, that ball is traveling 100 miles an hour. It is 6 inches away from the bat. And you literally have no idea where it's going or what's about to happen. There's nothing predictable about baseball. So when you get the guys like Gary Cohen or Howie Rose or Michael Kay, or like the guys that call baseball and make things you've never even seen before, or wild plays, rundown plays, where all of a sudden you've got outfielders like involved in the rundown, or crazy things that can happen in a baseball game, and they make it sound easy when they call it. It's not easy. I mean, I can speak from experience. To me, you have to have called, a million innings to get to the point where you're just comfortable knowing that whatever scenario comes up in a baseball game, I'm going to be ready to describe it accurately and sequentially and do it the right way. I think that baseball play-by-play might be, the most impressive art of all for what we do, and I don't even do it.
Thoughts on the Rangers and the Devils this season, Bob?
Stay healthy. I mean, especially for the Devils, like every time their season's been short circuited, it's when like Dougie Hamilton or Jack Hughes or one of their best players has gone down. Same thing for the Rangers. The Rangers are older. Obviously, they've had some infusion of young talent. I'm wondering, the Rangers are still built, it seems to me, mostly around the Zibanejad, Panarin, Fox core, and those guys are older. And the last few years, they've looked like guys that can put up great numbers in the regular season, but can be taken out of their game if they get to the postseason. And last year, they didn't even make it. So, kind of running it back with a lot of the same core to me. I'm a Rangers fan, so I'm hoping they're in the postseason. Obviously, at ESPN, it's always good for us to have the Rangers in the playoffs. We want them there. And the jumping off point for them will always be, at least for the foreseeable future, they've got the goalie, right? Like they've got a guy in Igor that can win a Vezina any year. He's that level. He's a top 5 goalie in the NHL on anybody's list. So when you have that guy, you have a chance every night. If you make it to the playoffs, you have a chance to win any series. I love the JT Miller trade because I think that was a trade last year, not just to try to make the playoffs, but for the future. He's a playoff player to me. Like he is a sandpaper, go win pucks in the corner, throw his body around, gritty, and also incredibly talented goal scoring type players. They have a lot on their team that's easy to like. But even if they make the playoffs, I just hope that their guys can carry over the regular season production to the playoffs, because that's been a struggle for them when they've made it recently.
And it's funny, Bob, because I also am a huge Rangers fan. So, like you, do you see the difference between last year's team and this year's team? Not only with JT Miller now as captain, but also because of the Sullivan effect and Mike, new head coach Mike Sullivan. It kind of, don't you see at least where, obviously the home ice is an issue right now because they haven't scored and they set a record for, the amount of periods without
Yeah.
scoring a goal at home. But you don't see them with that everything's falling on top of them. They seem to have a different mentality this year, and it showed in the game in Montreal, even though it was away, it wasn't at the Garden, but where they're not letting one instance just ruin and sidetrack them for everything else. Do you at least see a little bit of different personality in this year's team?
Yeah, I'm letting the dog out, by the way, because she's making a lot of noise. There must be a squirrel in the backyard or something. Yeah, it's such a small sample size to this point. Like, I mean, to me, you need probably to get to like almost Thanksgiving before you
Right.
really can see if he's put his imprint on the team. And look, totally blown out of proportion, the 3 home shutouts.
Right.
They played 2 road games and scored 10.
Right.
in the 2 road games. They're averaging 5 goals a game on the road and none at home. So obviously, like, water finds its level. It's an 82 game season.
Yeah.
They're going to score goals at home. They're going to win games at home. By the time we get to Christmas and February and whatever, it'll be everyone will be looking, 50 games into the season. Boy, remember when the Rangers couldn't score a goal at home in the first week of the year? So that'll be way in the rearview mirror. But yes, look, Mike Sullivan, there's a reason why when it was finally time for Pittsburgh to kind of have a different voice in the room, he was unemployed for like 5 minutes.
Right.
And the Rangers paid him a fortune to try to, I mean, obviously, he didn't forget how to coach. He's a terrific coach. I mean, when you're, coaching at 4 Nations, when you're coaching at the Olympics, when you can motivate and galvanize a group of superstars like that, you can handle everything that New York has to throw at you. So, yes, I do think that they will take on his personality as the season goes on, and that will be nothing but a good thing for them.
Bob, as we wrap up this morning, let me put this on here. I didn't want to start this way, but I know you're a Union Catholic Vikings guy. I'm the pitching coach at Jonathan Dayton High School in Springfield. We're really young this coming season. Could you go easy on us at least once?
It has Union Catholic beaten up Dayton a little bit? Has that been
once or
the
twice.
trend of late?
Yeah, once or twice.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll see if I'll let them know that if they don't at least take their foot off the gas pedal when they play you guys, maybe I'll back off on my donations for a month.
Bob, a pleasure talking with you. We enjoy your broadcasts with Anthony Becht on the Jets games on radio, and best of luck going forward.
Thanks, guys.
And
Thanks,
as
Bob.
always, subscribe. If you like what we do, tell a friend. If you hate what we do, tell an enemy, and we'll talk to you next week.